Hello, friends, and welcome to this program from wherever you are. We welcome you and we thank you for joining us and tuning into watching this program. And however you're watching on the internet or on CD or in your car, wherever you're watching this program and listening to it, we thank God for you. Today, we're going to talk about Islam. What is Islam? You know, we hear headlines on the news. We hear different political leaders talk about Islam. We hear some people said Islam is peaceful, some people say Islam is bad, some people say Muslims are terrorists, some say no, Muslims are peaceful people, and people don't know, and they're in the dilemma, they're in between, and people have different ideas, different ideologies, different beliefs, and we're going to talk about Islam today from an ex-Muslim. I used to be Muslim, I was born and raised a Muslim, and I practice Islam. I did everything Islam was asking me to do according to Sharia law and so forth. And I lived under Islam. I know what Islam is. So today I'm going to explain to you what Islam is. And this program, in no way, shape, and form, is to harass Muslims or to spread hatred about Muslims or so forth. Not at all. In fact, we love Muslims. I've been serving Muslims for almost 12 years, sharing the gospel with them. So we love people. We cannot hate people because the Bible, Jesus said that love your enemies and those who persecute you and pray for those who spitefully use you and so forth. So we are to love people, even if they don't agree with us, even if we don't agree with them, if we don't believe in what they believe, we still love them. But it doesn't mean we have to agree with them to love them. And that's a misunderstanding. Some people, unfortunately, believe that if we oppose someone, if we disagree with someone, that is a sign we hate them. No, not at all. I disagree with Muslims, but I have relatives who are Muslims. I have aunts and uncles who are Muslims. But they're good people. They're nominal Muslim. They're namely Muslim. And what about the ideology of Islam? And it's so mind-boggling. It's so sad to see so many people don't see the difference between Islam and Muslims. And I talk to people all the time, and when we talk about Islam, they say, oh, you are a bigot, or you are a hate monger, or so forth. And we say, no, we talk about Islam as an ideology, and not per se, not Muslims as people. I give an example. For example, communism is the ideology, but communist is the person who believes in communism. And the same way, Islam is the ideology, Muslim is the person who believes in Islam. And a majority of Muslims are born Muslim, in a Muslim family, in a Muslim house. And according to Sharia law, if your father is a Muslim, if you're born in a Muslim house, you're a Muslim. And many people, they grew up in a Muslim family, they go to a school, they work, they go to university, they work hard, and they never really practice Islam. They're just nominal, namely Muslim. They just carry a tag or a title. They really don't know what Islam is. And so the purpose of Islam, and the reason Islam came, and the beginning of Islam, the purpose of Islam, what is Islam? Is Islam a religion? Is Islam a belief? Is Islam a philosophy? What is Islam? And so today we're going to talk about that. And if you know Muslims, you got to love them and pray for them, but tell them the truth. Tell them about Jesus. Tell them who Jesus is. And according to the Bible, we have an antichrist, and we have many antichrists because antichrist is a spirit, but his influence, the spirit of Antichrist is to oppose Christ. And I believe Islam is an ideology that was started by the spirit of Antichrist through Muhammad to oppose the church, to oppose Christianity. If you notice, they say we believe in Jesus, we know that he existed, we know that he loved children, he was a very good prophet, but they deny the crucifixion, they deny his burial, they deny his resurrection, and they deny his deity. These are the pillars of the gospel. These are the foundation of the gospel. If you deny these things, then there's no gospel. And as Jesus prophesied, as his apostles prophesied, that the false prophet would come and they deny this message. And in 1 John chapter 2, John says that who is a liar except the one who denies that Jesus is the Messiah, that Jesus came to the flesh, that God came to the flesh. So he who denies the Father, the Son, that's the spirit of Antichrist. And Islam clearly says that God is not the Father and has no Son. Now, they think naturally, they think when we say Jesus is the Son of God, they think that we are saying that God came and married a woman and Jesus was born. That's not what we say. That's not what we believe. When we say that Jesus is the Son of God, it means that Jesus is the only person who could exhibit the character of God. So the Son of God is a person, because in Greek the word son, it means a person who could fully exhibit his father's character. There are different words for a baby, for a toddler, for a child, for a son, and for a mature man, for a father. So the word for child is teknon, referring to a child, referring to the fact of birth, that this child was born of this man. But the word son, it does not refer to the fact of birth, but it refers to a person who could fully and completely exhibit his father's character. So Jesus is the Son of God, meaning he could fully exhibit the character of God. Many prophets before Jesus, like Moses and Joseph and David and Solomon and Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Malachi, Zechariah, all these prophets, they could talk about God, and some of them have had some traits of God, some good moral traits, but none of them could fully exhibit Father's character. But the Bible says, if you have seen Jesus, you have seen the Father. Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Meaning, I am God. I am the one who can exhibit the character of God. So that's why Jesus is the Son of God. And he is God. Jesus is God who became a man. But Quran and Islam completely opposes this. In fact, they kill Christians because of the very thing. They say because you are mushrik. Mushrik means someone who associates another person with God. And since Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God, they're mushrik, meaning they're associating someone else with God, and they're worthy of punishment and death. Muhammad said, kill the mushriks. And kafir is somebody who doesn't believe in Islam, doesn't believe in Allah. In Surah Al-Tawbah, verse 29 and 30, Muhammad commanded his followers. He said that the Jews believe that Ezra is the Son of God, and the Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God. He said, Allah's curse be upon them. And he says, kill them wherever you find them. And in verse 30 it says, kill them wherever you find them, even if they're the people of the book. He says, kill those who don't believe in Allah, those who don't believe in the last day, those who don't believe in the Prophet of Allah, which is Muhammad, those who basically do not forbid what Allah and His Prophet have forbidden. And then it says that those who don't believe in the last day, it says kill them. Now in Arabic it says kill them, but in English they translate it, they try to tune it down. They translate it to fight. But in Arabic it says qatalu, means kill. Kill those who don't believe in Allah, nor in the last day, nor in His Prophet, and so forth. So see, the spirit of Islam, the purpose of Islam to come to oppose Christianity and the church. If you notice, the moment Muslims gain power in a country, the first thing they do, they destroy the churches. They kill the Christians. In Iraq, in Syria, in Iran. In Iran, when Ayatollah Khomeini became the supreme leader, he commanded that they close down the churches, and they stopped the churches. And they said no church building is allowed to be built. In Saudi Arabia, there is no church. They don't allow any people of other faith. Even in Makkah, city of Makkah, no non-Muslim can travel there. Can you imagine if in America we say no Muslim is allowed, no non-Christian is allowed to travel to Oklahoma? The outrage, imagine the outrage. And so we see that the hypocrisy within Islam and so forth, that they believe they have the truth, but they oppose the gospel of Jesus Christ. They oppose the Bible. So is Islam peaceful? No, not at all. Islam is not a peaceful religion. Now, the Quran is divided to two portions. Basically, we call them Makkiyan verses and Medina verses. When Muhammad was in Mecca, he didn't have a whole lot of power. So he preached for almost for 12 years, and he had like 70 people followed him. Then he was rejected by his own tribe, by Quraysh. And then he was rejected by people, by the Jews. They said, no, you're not a prophet. And then he moved to Medina. When he was in Medina, he basically went to these tribes and different, these groups of people who were living, the Bedouins and the gangs around Medina. And he told them, see, you're poor and you don't have a whole lot, you don't have much, because the Jews in Medina, they have taken everything from you, because the Jews are prosperous, Christians were prosperous. They're doing business and so forth. His own wife, Muhammad's wife, Khadija, was a Jew. She was a businesswoman. Muhammad was working for her. So we see that the Jews were prosperous, and Muhammad said the reason you are not wealthy and you don't have much because of the Jews. So he, gathered all these people together. He formed an army, and then when the caravans would come out of Mecca, Muhammad would go and fight with them and would kill the men, would take the goods and take the woman, and they divide the spoils. And as people saw that they are getting rich this way, more people joined them. So they became an army of 10,000 people. And that's how Islam gained power. Then he finally conquered the whole Mecca, Medina, the whole Arabia. And then after Muhammad's death, the Islam was spread to the entire Middle East by force. Omar, which was one of Muhammad's caliphate, he spread Islam by sword. He traveled, he attacked Iran and many different countries, and they forced them to become Islamic. Can you imagine why the entire nation of Iran or Persia must become Muslim? I mean, the message of Islam was so thrilling and so good that the entire population fell on their faces and they repented when they heard Islam? No. They came by force, by sword, and they forced people to become Muslim. They kill people, just like ISIS in Saudi Arabia. They tell people, either you become, they tell the minorities, the Christians or Yazidis or other people or the Jews, they tell them, either you become a Muslim or you have to pay jizya or we kill you. Jizya is the blood money. It's a tax you pay in order not to be killed. And Quran says that in Surah 9 verse 30, it says, kill them unless they pay jizya, with humiliation. And so this is what Islam is. Islam was started peacefully. That's why Muhammad was peaceful in Mecca, because he didn't have power. But then when he went to Medina, it changed. And the same strategy is played out by Muslims. When they go to a country that don't have much power, they're peaceful. They're nice Muslims. But the moment they become a majority, then they start protesting and they start killing and fighting, and they start just look at London, look at the European countries, look at France. Muslims block the streets. They come, they protest on the streets. They say death to England, death to America. They basically say we want Sharia law and so forth. So see, this belief has a problem, and it's not something that some Muslims have misunderstood Islam and they're abusing it, because this is the message that some politicians unfortunately say that, oh, that's not the real Islam, that's a radical version, they are misusing Islam, they are abusing Islam. How come for centuries a belief, an ideology could be misunderstood for so long in so many countries? The problem with Islam is not limited to just one nation or one city or one neighborhood or one country. The problem with Islam is, we see it in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India, the Kashmir conflict between India and Pakistan. We see it in even in China. We see it in Chechnya, in Russia. We see it in Egypt. We see it in Kenya. We see it in Nigeria. We see it in Saudi Arabia, we see it in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, we see it in United Arab Emirates, we see it in Turkey, all these terrorism and all these bombings and so forth. We see it in so many countries. In Algeria, we see it in everywhere Islam is a majority. The minorities are mistreated. People of different faith are mistreated. And there's no safety, there's no security, and bombings all over, and fights, and discrimination, and so forth. So that's why we see it that this whole thing, in in Lebanon, where the Palestinians are, the conflict all over in Syria, in Iraq. And so what is wrong with Islam? Why so many people, so many places, they take this ideology and misunderstand this ideology? If nobody can understand it properly, then it's not a good ideology. Why people misunderstand? Now, okay, let's say people misunderstand it. Now we go to the text. We go to the founder of that belief, the founder of that ideology. Look at Muhammad's life. We examine Muhammad's life. Now, don't look at Christians and say, okay, this is Christianity. Christianity is good because Christians are good, or Islam is bad because Muslims are bad. Go to the founders. Go to the person, to the text of the book. Go to the Bible. Go to the Quran. If Muslims behead people, does Islam prescribe that? Does Quran prescribe that? If Muslims commit jihad, does Islam prescribe that? If Muslims commit jihad and they behead people, they chop hands, and they mistreat Christians and minorities and Jews, does Islam prescribe that? Did Muhammad do that? Yes. Muhammad killed an entire village of Bani Qurayza. They were a Jewish village. Muhammad killed all of them. He destroyed all of them. For 23 years, Muhammad drew a sword. He fought in wars, and he killed people. In fact, if you look at the Saudi Arabia flag, there's a message in Arabic. It says, "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." Underneath that message, there's a sword. And the sword, basically that was their motto. Either this one, either you believe that Allah is God, the only true God, and Muhammad is his messenger, his prophet, or else we treat you with a sword. So that was their motto. Today, that's Saudi Arabia's motto. So the motto of Islam is that you believe that Allah is the only God, the only true God, and there is no God beside him. Basically, it says there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And if you don't believe that, then a sword, then war, fight. And that's exactly what the message of Islam was and is going to be. There is no such a thing as peaceful Islam. There is no such a thing as peaceful Muslim. Those good Muslims that you see, they're good people, they are not really Muslims. They are nominal Muslims. For example, I have aunts, uncles. They're Muslims. They're good people. They pray, they fast. But they never really taken Islam seriously. They never really have gone deep into Islam and trying to fulfill the mission of Islam and to commit jihad and so forth. But if someday someone wants to do that, then it becomes a danger. So Islam is not a peaceful religion. Islam is not a good religion. And now there are some good Muslims. You might have some good neighbors who are good people, nice people, fairly good, and maybe a co-worker, a colleague, a student at a school. Maybe, you see them, they're good people. They're not violent. They are not terrorists. But don't let those people to cause you misunderstand Islam. Go to the text of Islam. Go to the root of Islam. Go to the Prophet of Islam. Did Prophet Muhammad commit jihad? Did he kill? Did he fight? Yes, of course. Now Muslim says, oh, he fought with enemies. No. A village full of women and men and children, they were not fighting with Muhammad. Muhammad killed them when he had power. And so forth. Now, we don't say that because there is violence, but Muhammad killed them because they didn't believe in Muhammad and his message. And then Islam began to spread. They came to Persia. They conquered Iraq. They conquered basically Mesopotamia. They conquered Syria, Lebanon, and Israel, and came all the way. They conquered all these nations. They came all the way to Europe. Muslims conquered some part of France, and then entire Spain was invaded by Muslims. And then Charles Martel, he fought with the Muslims in France and kicked them out. And then El Cid fought with the Muslims in Spain and kicked them out, and so forth. In fact, there's a day in Spain known as the day of kicking Islam out, day of basically exile of Islam. They kicked Islam out of the country. So Islam is not a peaceful religion. Just look at it in the countries that are Islamic, predominantly Muslims. We have problem with all these Muslim countries. And it's not 1, 2, 3, it's entire Muslim countries. So the problem is with the ideology of Islam. Now, for example, if you see a few good Chinese, you don't say, okay, communism is good. If you see some North Korean good people, you don't say, oh, communism is good because they believe in communism. Or if you see some Cubans, you don't say, oh, Islam is good, communism is good because Cubans are communists. Or you don't say, for example, imperialism is good because Japanese are good people. You don't say, for example, fascism is good because, Italians are good people and so forth. They used to be fascists, with Mussolini and so forth. And so you don't judge based upon some good people. You don't judge an ideology based upon good people. You examine the ideology based upon what it says, based upon truth, based upon your logic, your conscience, and also go to the root of the issue. Is communism good? No, we oppose communism. Although we love the North Koreans, the Cubans, the Chinese, the Russians, but we oppose communism. Although we love Italians, but we oppose fascism. Although we love Japanese, but we oppose imperialism. It doesn't mean that we hate Japanese. It doesn't mean that we hate Russians or Italians or Cubans or different kinds of people. We don't hate people. We have to oppose and reject ideologies. And you know what? To be honest with you, Islam has had its way so far deep into our society and even our politics that even some politics defend Islam. And I cannot, ask those people who defend Islam, have you read the Quran? And I promise you, majority of them, or all of them, they would say no. So how can you defend an ideology that you never read about? I just was talking to someone on Twitter. Someone was messaging me on Twitter that Islam is peaceful and so forth. I said, have you read the Quran? I mean, most of people have not touched the Quran yet, but they defend it. So how can you defend Islam if you have not studied about it, if you have not read it? And don't go to a peaceful Muslim and ask him, is Islam good? Because he would say yes, because the version of Islam he believes in is a nominal, cultural, traditional Islam, not a real Islam that Quran prescribes. Even the culture has been affected by Islam. There's no peace among Muslims themselves. And there's war and jealousy and anger and fight and all those kind of things in Islam. Discrimination. You go to a Muslim country, there's a poll in Egypt that 80-some%, more than 80% of Egyptians believe in Sharia law, believe that death is the punishment for adultery. They believed in stoning people who have committed adultery. They believe in chopping of hands. They believed in jihad. So these are not the terrorists who live in caves. These are the daily grocery shopping people who live among us, and they live in their own countries. Because to them, Islam is the utopia. They believe that if the whole Islam, the whole world comes under the rule of Islam and Sharia law, then we're going to have peace. As long as Islam is not in power, then there is no peace. And they see the reason for their misery and their problem and their poverty and their problems. They see the West and Israel the reason, the cause for their problems. And they believe that if they eliminate the West, then someday, and Islam start ruling and reigning, then there will be perfect peace. And that's just a utopia they believe in. And we have to fight with the ideology of Islam. And we have to expose it. We have created a politically correct culture that people even don't dare to talk about these things these days. But we have to be open-minded and talk about it. And people have to be tolerant. Okay, I don't agree with your ideology. Your ideology is false, and I don't agree with it. So we have to tolerate each other. You can oppose me as a Christian and tell me, oh, I don't believe in Christianity. I don't believe in the Bible. I don't take a knife or a weapon or come chasing you and call you names, bigot, intolerant. I don't do that because the Bible doesn't say that. But Islam says, kill the enemies of Islam. Kill those who don't believe in Allah. Kill those who don't believe in the last day. Kill those who don't believe in the Prophet of Allah. Kill those who don't believe. And it's all killing and fights and wars and so forth. But we as God's children, we are His people. We love Him. We love people. We love God. We love the people of God, the children of God. We believe in love and peace and unity and so forth. But when people want to chop your head off because of what you believe, there's not going to be peace. So Islam is not a peaceful religion. Jihad is when you kill yourself on the way of Allah in order to promote Islam or to cause Islam to progress. You kill yourself in the way of Allah. And that's jihad. That's the only way you go to heaven according to Islam. And then Sharia law is the way that Muhammad lived, and you have to live the same way. The beliefs and the sayings of Muhammad, hadith are the sayings of Muhammad, and then Sunnah is the way Muhammad lived. So you have to do those things and keep those laws and rituals in order to be a good Muslim. And also you have to commit jihad, fight the enemies, and so forth. So Islam began with war, and it will never be peace in Islamic countries. It will never be. In fact, I believe that Muslim countries are not ready for democracy. And Saddam Hussein said that. Saddam said that, after he was overthrown, he told the interrogator that you will lose in Iraq. He said, why? He said, because you don't understand the mindset of Muslims. You don't understand the belief of Muslims. You don't understand their ideology. You don't understand their culture, their thinking. And it's true, because we think if we go change the leader, then the country is going to be okay. But that's not the case. Unless their heart is changed, there would never be peace. Because the moment somebody gets into power in those countries, some people hate him and they're jealous at him, they're angry with him, and they want to overthrow him. So there will be civil disobedience, bombings, terrorism, and so forth, until that government is overthrown. And it's gonna. The Arab Spring. Remember the Arab Spring, when people say, "Oh, there's gonna be a spring in Arab countries," and it changed, but it turned to an Arab winter. Now we don't know who's in power, who's in charge, and so forth. Terrorism, bombing. Look at Turkey. Almost every other week there's a bomb blowing up there. In Iraq, for years there has been war there. In Afghanistan, 50 years of war, a civil war between Muslims themselves. And then, America helped Muslims in Afghanistan when Afghans were fighting with the Russians. When Russia wanted to take over Afghanistan, then Afghans began to fight with the Russians and defending their sovereignty and their country. And U.S. supported them with the weapons, with money, with food, with everything that the U.S. could. And they supported the Muslims, they supported the jihadists, the people who were defending Afghanistan. But when Russia came out of Afghanistan, then they turned, and instead of saying thank you to America, the terrorists start slapping America in the face. So America didn't bother Muslims before 9/11. America didn't do anything to them. In fact, helped them. But they were the ones who came against America. They are the ones who came against the West, and they want to bomb the West. Look at the refugees in European countries, in America, in Canada, in Australia. The Europeans opened their arms and welcomed them. But the moment they come to those countries, they want their own Sharia law, they want to protest. In England, there are neighborhoods that non-Muslims cannot go, because those areas are predominantly Muslims. And if you are the only non-Muslim, they paint your house, they break your car, they break your door, and so forth, and they do something to you until you leave that neighborhood. So that whole neighborhood becomes Islamic. So it's going to cause problem. We don't mind Muslims come to European countries, but when they come and bring their problems, when they come and they bring mindset, they run away from the same Sharia law, from the same junk. And when they come here, they want to have the same thing that they run away from. And if you want hijab, if you want Sharia law, why don't you go to Saudi Arabia? Why don't you go to Iran? Why don't you go to Iraq? Why don't you go to Syria? Why don't you go to an Islamic country where you can practice your Islam freely, predominantly Muslims, there's no kafir there's no infidels, they're not enemies. Why do you want to come to a European country who are Christians if you don't have an agenda? And Muslim immigration is going to be a problem, because when millions of Muslims flow into Western countries, they're going to cause a problem. Over time, maybe in 50 years, 20 years, 30 years, they're going to cause a huge problem. And civil war, and then bloodshed, much bloodshed. So it's good to not to allow them to come, than to allow them come, and then you have to fight with them, and much bloodshed, much crime, much bombings, and look at the bombings, in America, and in the countries, European countries, Germany, all these bombings. Just recently on Christmas Eve, a few days before Christmas, this guy with the truck, who was a refugee, he was living in Europe, and then he got a truck and he killed the truck driver, he took his truck and he ran the truck into a Christian store. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I mean, what Christians have done to you? In Iraq, America went there, Christians went there and helped them building hospitals. Right now, I know Christian organizations in Iraq who are feeding Iraqis, who are taking medicine and hospitals and so forth. They're helping them. Have you seen one Muslim country go to the aid of Iraqis? Have you seen Saudi Arabia has 100,000 air-conditioned tent, that they can fit 500,000 people in those tents. They have not taken even one refugee. Not even one refugee. They have the same religion, they have the same belief, they eat the same food, same culture, same language, same belief. Why Saudi Arabia or other Muslim countries have not taken even one Muslim country? Their neighbors almost are close. Why they want to come 10,000 miles away to America or to Europe? To do what? They don't have the same culture, they don't have the same language, they don't have the same food, they don't have the same belief. So it's going to cause problem. And this is something that is very serious. And if we oppose Islamic immigration, if we oppose Islam, doesn't mean that we're bigot and we are basically hate mongers and intolerant or xenophobia or so forth. No, we are not. We just have to be cautious. And the history of Islam, Islam destroyed Iran. Iran is the first country who drafted the first human rights declaration, the ancient Persia. And Persia was a good friend of Israel. They treated Jews very well in the ancient times. But Iran is the second violator of the human right. So what caused Iran from being the first human rights declaration drafter to become a violator of human rights declaration and also to be a sponsor of terrorism? What? It's the ideology of Islam. And it's all over. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they have been supporting terrorism. So it's all over. And this conflict is never going to end with Israel, the Palestinian-Israeli. It's never going to end. Even if the Israelis give the entire land to the Muslims, they're still not going to be solved. And the hatred toward Jews is historical, and toward Jews and Christians. Muhammad said, kill the Christians and Jews and so forth. So I hope this program has helped you. And please write back to us if you have questions, if you have comments. We'll be glad to answer you. And this program, as I said, is never intended to basically cause hatred toward Muslims. Love Muslims, but don't believe what they say. Don't believe in their religion. And also expose it and tell them the truth. I love Muslims. I always share the gospel with them. I meet them every day, every week. I tell them about Jesus. But it doesn't mean that I agree with their belief. I disagree with their ideology. I believe it's wrong, it's false. But I love them and I share the gospel with them. God bless you. This was our program, and the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. Amen. اوکی سیاوشم براییم خوب بود؟ رد شدم از وقت؟ شوخی میکنیم